Welcome to today's lecture. We are going to be looking at schooling again. Last week we did kind of an introduction to education, and now we are going to be looking more at schooling. So we're going to look at schooling as a socializing system and teachers as agents of socialization. We're also this week going to look a little bit more at our mesosystems and our chronosystems. We've spent a lot of time looking at our microsystems. So within the microsystem, we've looked at families and parents. We're in schools now. Now we're going to look at the meso, which is the connections, and the macro and the exo as well. So we do know that schools have a tremendous influence on children, and we kind of looked at that last week. 12 to 13 years just to get out of high school, and then more kind of schooling on top of that as well. In this, I'm kind of going to talk about more formal schooling. So this is just public school, what most children in the United States end up going to. There are lots of different choices. There's homeschooling, there's charter schools, magnet schools, but for just kind of most children, most people go to their kind of local public school within their school district. And that's what I'm kind of just talking about, because that's most Americans. That doesn't mean that other choices are not valid, like a private school or homeschooling or anything like that. It's just the majority of the children in the United States go to local kind of public schools. Within that, we also have a lot of curriculum that are going to help us hopefully have some kind of achievement. So schools should be preparing us to be socialized within our world and our society. So typically in the United States, we are prioritizing either more education or a job after you leave high school. So that's the kind of achievement that we're looking for. You are either ready to join the workforce or you are ready to go on more into your education in order to join a different workforce as well. That's kind of the assumption between all of the educations is after education, you will be ready to work. Formal organizational system as well. So this is to kind of start with our classrooms. So we're going to look at classrooms and school behaviors as well. So public schooling, as I said, that's what I'm just kind of talking about because that's what the majority of the United States goes to, and that's what a lot of our policy in the United States is kind of built on the idea of universal and formal schooling. So there are lots of other choices that are outside of this, like private schools, magnet schools, homeschooling, but most of us go to universal schools, which is just your regular school. So it's open to any family. Any socioeconomic status, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be poor. Doesn't matter what your ability is. So if you have special needs, you still get education as well. It's open to all races and ethnicities. It doesn't discriminate based on the sexual orientation of the student or the student's families. And gender, we should have equal gender rights and responsibilities as well. So Abraham Lincoln kind of said, of the people, by the people, for the people. And that's kind of the idea of universal schooling, is it's for everybody, regardless of any kind of other status. And then I would also consider school in the United States to be formal. So it's methodical. You learn something in kindergarten, then you learn it in first, then second, then third. So it builds upon each other. It's result-based, so that's why we have testing. We want to make sure that children have a certain level of literacy, that they can do a certain amount of math, and it should be evidence-based as well. That's what we're trying to kind of get more towards too, is how do children learn and how can we support them in learning formally while also using research and education from research and evidence from education-based learning systems. So this is your homework for this week. So you are going to be reading from our textbook like always, but I have a little, hopefully more fun or a more creative activity for you to do online. So you are put in charge of a local public schools. So they have $1 million, which seems like a lot, but it's not, especially not in education, because we have so many students that we have to provide for. So you have been put on a task force or a committee, and you yourself get to decide what a public school is going to spend their $1 million on. So which program would you choose? So there's 4 choices. I want you to choose one, and I want you to defend why. and use information from the textbook, theory, ideas from Bronfenbrenner, why you think this program is the best for a local public school. And you can think about, if you live in San Marcos, Ramona, Oceanside, wherever you live, you can think about that kind of public school and maybe why it would be good for that community. So here are the 4 choices. Reduce class size for 2 years. So with $1 million, you would be able to get some more staff members. So maybe your class sizes would go down from 30 to 20. So you would be able to reduce class sizes. The ratios would be smaller, so more teachers teaching less students. You could have a school garden. So this would be a garden for all the children at the elementary school. They can learn about science. They can learn about the life cycle. They can grow their own food. They can learn about healthy choices. They can get dirty. They can play together. They can relax outside. So school gardens are definitely more science related, but it's also an opportunity to learn about healthy eating. The 3rd program would be a social and emotional behavioral specialist for 5 years with the curriculum that they can use past that time. So they would be able to hire a part-time behavioral specialist, like a social worker or a psychiatrist, somebody who can come into the school part-time, help the children, talk about social and emotional learning, help children that maybe are having a hard time keeping their hands to themselves. They might be a little bit more violent or aggressive, but a specialist who can really help children kind of learn social and emotional skills. And then they'll also buy a curriculum that they can use for a long time. So this might be a curriculum that a regular school teacher can use, that maybe in the new readings that they can do, books that they can have that talk about being kind, being nice, working together, cooperating, conflict resolution, stuff like that. And then the very last one would be a STEM app, so science, technology, engineering, and math. And this would be an app on your phone that the teachers and families can use. So the school would buy it. They would give the password and all the information to the families. The families could use it at home. It would help them teach their children at home about science and technology, engineering, and math, which is a big goal in the United States as far as education. And then teachers would have a teaching app as well. So the children would be getting curriculum in school from this app. They could go online and they could have curriculum and activities hands-on for learning engineering and technology, science, and math as well. So these are the 4 choices. You're going to choose one. It's totally up to you. No right or wrong. I will not grade you down. You can choose whatever choice you want. They're all great. They're all valid. And then you need to defend why. So use theory from the book, from the lecture, from online about why you think your choice is best for where you live and your local public school. So that's the activity for this week. I hope it's a little bit creative. You get to kind of choose something and look at why. All right, so we are going to be looking at teachers and teaching. So teaching and teachers. Teaching is part of our microsystem, and so our schools and teachers are our agents of socialization. So we are going to be looking at our mesosystem, and our mesosystem is a link, a connection, a relationship, and it's typically bidirectional. It means it goes back and forth. It's reciprocal. From one to the other, we can cross, and we're both giving and taking in a relationship. So if we're going to be looking at the links or the relationships in the microsystem, it would be between the teachers in school and the family. So the teachers are providing curriculum, they're providing education. The family should be providing support. They should be getting their children to school with attendance, maybe volunteering. So you can see it's bidirectional or reciprocal. Both parts of the microsystem are connected and have some kind of connection, and that is the mesosystem. So we might also have one between the teachers in school and the community. We might have some between the teachers in school and the media, and teachers in school and peers. So that is kind of the link. I'm going to play a little bit about another little video about Bronfenbrenner. All right, so I wanted to just pause on this part of the video because I think this kind of shows the mesosystem in a different way, which might be helpful for you. So in this, they have family, classrooms, religious settings, and peer groups. But I really like, and that's not typically what I talk about. I usually talk about within our microsystem as family, schools, communities, peers, and media. But in this situation, I like how they show the mesosystem connecting everything kind of in a circle. So while I have a different kind of idea about what the microsystem is, I think it's really nice to kind of see these arrows going back and forth, because that's the mesosystem. Those are those links, relationships, and connections between the classroom and the peer group, between the family and the schools, between family and community as well. So that's a good way to kind of see our mesosystem. And then past that is our exosystem. So our larger school system, like our school board, medical institutions like doctors and healthcare, that's all part of our exosystem. And then our larger macro system is cultural values, our beliefs, our national customs, philosophy, economics, all of that is part of our macro system. So within our microsystem, we have teachers, and teachers are an agent of socialization, as we've learned. But we actually have stages for learning, because the teacher that you get, the agent of socialization that you get, is on her own journey as an individual, or on his own journey as an individual as well. So it's nice to know that your agents of socialization are learning, growing, and changing as well. So we have a couple of stages for how teachers learn. So when you first start out as teaching, you're very new to the field. You've probably just got out of your credential program. You've had maybe a year of student teaching with a mentor, but you're very new, you're very maybe green, inexperienced. That's not a bad thing though. That typically means you've learned new theory, new ideas, new evidence, because you've just come out of school. What you've learned is fresh and new. You've probably spent a lot of time thinking about it and preparing. So there's a lot of inexperience, but there's also a lot of typically passion and an excitement as well when you are a novice in the field. The second one we call advanced novice or competent. So you can perform to basic standards. So, you probably taught a year, maybe this is your second year, maybe even your third. You're very basic, you know what to do, you understand the children, but you haven't really got to that kind of experience level. So you still have that passion and excitement, but you've learned a little bit more. You've got some more kind of experience, but not what we would really call a lot yet. Effective. Effective is probably your third to fifth year. You're very experienced. You've been around the block. You've seen children in all different areas, stages, development levels. Your performance is very good. You can take different children, different situations, different parents, and adapt yourself towards them. So if a parent needs something from you that maybe other parents in the past haven't needed, you can meet those needs. Same with the children as well. So you have all of that excitement and passion, but you're still very experienced, and you can draw on, maybe 3 to 5 years of experience when you're teaching. Expert. At this point, you've probably been in the game 7 to 10 years. You're inventing new ways. Maybe you're selling things on Teachers Pay Teachers. You have a great wealth of experience. You have books and file cabinets full of teaching materials. You've seen a lot of different children come through your doors. You've worked with lots of parents and principals. You're just very experienced, and you know a lot about teaching, and you can now teach others. Maybe at this point you're a mentor teacher, or you're teaching student teachers. They're coming into their classroom and learning from you. And then a master. I wouldn't say perfect, but this is probably 15 to 20 years. You are now really giving back to other people. You have a lot of more traditional theory and knowledge, but you can implement it very, very well in the classroom. You know your subject matter, you know it well, and you can teach it well. That's what we might consider a master teacher. So why do we really care about this? Once again, a teacher is an agent of socialization, and agents of socialization are also on their individual path. So you being in school, depending on what stage of teaching you have, that's going to give you a certain level of education. So if you have a novice versus a master teacher, one is not better than the other. They both have a lot of strengths and a lot of weaknesses as well, but that's going to change your agent of socialization and how they provide schooling to you. All right, so we're going to look at the mesosystems again. So once again, a mesosystem is a link, a connection, or a relationship. between maybe teachers and families. And some examples that we might see in this are parent-teacher conferences. So the teachers and the families, two parts of your microsystem, their connection to each other might be strengthened in parent-teacher conferences where the parent gets information about the child and how they're learning, and the teacher can bring up concerns, questions, or just information about the child. A lot of times within our schools and within our teachers, we have parent education built into that. We have PTO meetings, we have parent workshops so that we can strengthen those relationships between teachers and parents, like in a science night or a math night, coming together, learning together, and strengthening that mesosystem relationship. And how parents raise children can also influence children's behavior at school. So whatever you're socializing your child in, how you want them to act, is also going to spill over into the school. So if you're reading a lot at home, that's one of the biggest indicators, more so than homework actually, is reading 20 to 30 minutes a night for children. So the more that parents can have their children read independently or with somebody else, that actually improves vocabulary, it improves experience and text and things like that. So we want to support parents in doing activities like that that can really help them as well. Another mesosystem is the teachers and the community. So mesosystem is that connection between the teachers or the schools and the community. So this might be the amount of support that you get from the local community. So if you're having a Read Across America Day, the firefighters come out, the police officers come out, the mayor comes out and reads a book. You get sponsored by your local community so you can go on a basketball trip. So that kind of support from your local community also supports the classrooms and the teachers as well. So maybe a local business who supports and sponsors the local baseball team, or has a restaurant night so that extra funding can go to the school so that they can do more field trips. Those are all examples of community support that support another part of the microsystem, which is teachers and schools. The school board as well. The school board is part of our exosystem, and that also might support our community because the school board would decide how much pay teachers should have, if they should have raises or not. They're going to negotiate with the unions. They are going to give the teachers more funding if they need it as well. So the school board, part of the exosystem, is also part of the community that's supporting teachers. Teachers and media as well. Teachers are really, really lucky right now. When I started teaching, we didn't have hashtags. We didn't have social media, didn't exist. The internet was around, but it was not really part of the classrooms at all. My first years teaching, we didn't have iPads, we didn't have computers, laptops were not readily available. So it has been really great for me to see technology and how it supports individual teachers. If we were together in the classroom, I would have you search hashtag teachers of Instagram on social media. TikTok and Instagram have lots and lots of teachers hashtags and really, really great ideas where I've learned just like amazing things. I just saw one a couple days ago about Guess Who. So I'm making a Guess Who game of theorists, so child development theorists like Brofenbrenner, Piaget. I'm going to be making a Guess Who game to kind of help students be able to remember who theorists and stages are as well. Pinterest is really, really great as well. If we were in class, I would have you guys do this. Just go on Pinterest and search math games, science activities, STEM, young children, preschool. There are so many ways. And teaching has really, I think, just improved in creativity when we can share all of these types of things on our social media platforms. Teachers and peers. So another mesosystem is the teacher relationship with your peers. So this is typically a parent and children. So does the teacher prioritize peer relationships? This might be a question that you might want to ask in the mesosystem. Is there a lot of group work, collaboration in the classroom? Working on conflict resolution, working on talking to each other, being kind to each other. That might be how a teacher supports peer relationships. Another example might be, a lot of times teachers as a punishment or a consequence will take away recess, which I really don't kind of agree with. I think children have been in the classroom, they need to run, and that's going to reduce some of the behaviors. If you can run, jump, be outside, get all those wiggles out basically. And then also it is a way, recess is a way to support social and emotional learning. Running, jumping, having fun with your friends, playing with your friends, you're working on social and emotional skills. So I think taking recess away is pretty counterproductive. There are other consequences that classrooms and children can have that don't take away another form of learning, which is social and emotional. So we are going to look at our chrono system and our macro system. The chrono system, when I really kind of look, I'm sorry, with macro system, I've really been kind of looking at the idea of school violence, because when I was growing up, violence did happen. There was a lot of violence within schools. But it has kind of changed, especially I was in high school, I was in my senior year when Columbine happened. And so Columbine was kind of a big turning point. And so now we do have quite a bit of school violence. And I think that's a macro level issue. It's kind of tapping into culture, ideas, attitudes, beliefs about violence, about school, about guns, about mental illness as well. So we know that children engage in violence in school, and you know, humans are violent. We always have been. Hopefully we won't always be, but we have always kind of been violent. So I think if we were looking at Bronfenbrenner, if we were looking at the ecological system, what would be the best way to prevent school-based violence? We could look at it through Urie Bronfenbrenner's lens. So in our microsystem, when somebody engages in violence, you know, what was their life like at home? What were their parents like? What was their school like? What was their peer relationships like? What was their community like? How supportive was their community? And what kind of media did they have as well? So all of those microsystems maybe might contribute or not a student engaging in violence as well out in the community. And also our macro system might also do that as well. Because remember, macro system is attitudes, values, beliefs, cultures, economics, law as well. So I'm not going to play this video. Here we go. So what we are going to do is, we are going to look once again at this area right here. So on the right hand screen, I just want to reiterate what we are kind of learning in. So we have looked at the child today. We've looked at their microsystem as well. So last week we did schools. Today we kind of looked at teachers as an agent of socialization. So we're still in the microsystem, but we looked today at mesosystem. So these are the connections between teachers and the rest of that environment. So the teachers and parents, teachers and media, teachers and community, and teachers and peers, and how important those connections, links, and relationships are. So I just want to reiterate. So we're still looking at the microsystem, but today we learned more about the mesosystem. We also looked at the exosystem, which is like healthcare. The school district or the school board is a very big part of our exosystem. If we were trying to look at our macro system, that would be social and cultural values, our attitudes, our beliefs, and then our chrono system, which is changes over time. So our generational changes, so me going to school in the 90s is going to be different than a child going to school now. School policy has changed, federal policy about schools has changed, public school funding has changed, California state ideas have changed as well. So if we were in class, once again, we would talk about school violence, and we would look at it in all of these different areas. So we might look at our microsystem. So once again, an individual child who is violent or maybe has had violence happen to them, what 5 parts of the microsystem are supporting that or not? How supportive is the community? What is the family life like? How many friends do they have? If we were looking at the mesosystem, how can connections between school and community help or hinder school violence or just violence in general? So maybe more recreation centers, youth leagues, more sports, more opportunities in the community for children to have healthy, positive relationships might decrease violence in schools or at homes as well. If we were looking at the exosystem and school violence or just violence in general as well, this might be the parent's job. So how long and how far do parents have to commute? Do they have more time to spend with their children? Maybe the city council and their funding or their thoughts about children and getting them more support or less support, what they think support should look like. Maybe a city council that has really prioritized local recreation leagues like Parks and Recreation, sports teams like this, they might see a decrease in gang-related violence or just violence in the community because they might have invested more in recreational opportunities that youths can participate in. And then if we were looking at macro system, maybe looking at what your religion says about violence, what your political ideology is, what your society's attitudes, knowledge, and beliefs might be, and then even the economic situation that people are in as well, like poverty and things like that, that might also contribute or not to violence. So if we take this large idea of something like violence, we can take it down to the very immediate, to a child and why they might do something, and then larger ideas that might support or not support somebody being violent. So that's why we like, when we're thinking about socialization, to use something like Bronfenbrenner's theory, because it helps us break it down into parts that maybe help us understand it as well. So this week, we've talked through the entire theory. You guys are going to do an online activity about supporting the public school with $1 million and what you would choose. And we've also kind of looked at the entire Bronfenbrenner theory as a whole. All right, I will see you guys online. Have a great week.